So hello, bonjour, bonjour, and welcome to How Ontario Local Food to School Programs Are Keeping Kids Connected During COVID, a webinar hosted by Sustain's Ontario Edible Education Network. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Nicole Hampleton, and I'm the Ontario Regional Lead for Farm to Cafeteria Canada, which is a position hosted by Sustain Ontario. My role is to support Ontario Farm to School grantees that have received funding from Farm to Cafeteria Canada, and to promote and enable knowledge and knowledge sharing across the province. Today, I will be introducing the webinar and supporting our discussion. Carolyn Webb is joining us as well. She's the coordinator for Sustain's Ontario Edible Education Network and the Knowledge and Transition Lead for Farm to Cafeteria Canada. Along with her long list of awesome attributes, she is usually the host of these successful webinars. But today, Carolyn will be helping with Zoom technology, monitoring the chat box, and spotlighting the videos on me to help me look good. So thank you very much, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. I'm joining you from Mulmer or Mansfield, Ontario. Does anybody know where that is? And I'd like to acknowledge that the place I call home is located on the ancestral territory of the Anishinaabe Nation. The Anishinaabe Nation actually represents 39 First Nations throughout the province of Ontario, from Golden Lake in the east, Sarnia in the south, Thunder Bay and Lake Nipigon in the north. I commit with humility and gratitude to respect these ancestral lands and the gifts they contain by caring for my community, respecting and honoring the land in which it is located. And I hope that you would join me in these efforts. Thank you. I'd also like to recognize that the month of October is Farm to School Month, and we've been celebrating with land-based learning. Local food systems are rooted in the land, and this land comes with deep history, stories, and lessons to share. We believe that education about our local food system must tie back to the land and the water, and understanding and fostering our connection to them, hence keeping kids connected. Land-based learning is also rooted in Indigenous teachings and worldviews, which should be acknowledged whenever this approach is used. You may have also noticed in the title of this webinar, we've used the term local food to school. Most of you are used to seeing farm to school. As we work to honor Indigenous ways of knowing and being, we are conscious of the language we use and its impact it might have on others. The term farm for many Indigenous peoples is problematic and can trigger a history of forced labor and mistreatment. Also, farms are not the only source of food in our local food systems. We can get food from our natural environments, from our lakes, from our rivers, from our seas, and from our forests. As such, the use of the term local food to school more holistically represents the varied sources of nourishment and respect for our Indigenous relations. And I know I don't need to convince anyone out there on this webinar about the importance of keeping kids connected to the land and where their food comes from. And we recognize that importance, and we're honored to have presentations to learn more about how we can do that today. As a quick note about Sustain Ontario's Edible Education Network, it was established to support individuals and organizations who are working to get children and youth eating, growing, cooking, celebrating, and learning about healthy and locally sustainably produced food. We've been hosting a series of webinars on how school communities are adapting their food programs in a time of COVID, and this will be our 5th in the series. Our past events have focused on various aspects of school food, and the recordings are available on the Sustain Ontario YouTube channel. Yes, we have a YouTube channel. All right, now we'll have a look at our agenda. So we've gone over the introduction and housekeeping, and then we'll launch into hearing from our fabulous speakers today, who will have about 10 minutes each to present. And then after the speakers, we will have a quick Q&A session. So if during a presentation a question or a comment comes to you, please put it in the chat. and we will be monitoring the chat box, and those are the questions that we will answer during the Q&A period. And then we will have a breakout session where you'll get together in a small group and be able to share some of your successes and challenges around COVID. And then we'll do a quick report back. And then we'll have goodbyes and thank yous. So just a little note about the breakout rooms. There will be a moderator in each of the breakout rooms who will introduce themselves to you. You will have ample time for your fellow breakout-ees and you to discuss program successes and adaptations in light of COVID and to share any questions or challenges you may have with programming right now. You're going to have experts in your breakout room, so feel free to utilize their expertise. We would love it if afterwards the moderator could bring back a nugget or the essence of your conversation when we report back in our closing. So for your enjoyment today, we have 3 amazing speakers representing 3 diverse organizations. Each presenter, like I said, will have about 10 minutes to share about their programs. And if while you're listening, a question or comment comes to you, please put it in the chat box. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Allison Whitten from Headwaters Food and Farming Alliance. Good afternoon, Allison. Welcome.
Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Allison. I am a registered dietitian and the farm to school coordinator for the Headwaters Food and Farming Alliance. And I'm just going to share my screen here. Awesome. So our Headwaters Food and Farming Alliance is actually under the Headwaters Communities in Action. So it's a lot of H's and F's involved in all these acronyms, but we are farm to school. And I'm just going to be talking today a little bit about our 2 main programs and the effects COVID had on them and how we kind of navigated through that. So first I would like to acknowledge where Headwaters is. And in terms of the map, I stole that little image, but it's a great map showing where we are in comparison to Toronto. So we're northwest about an hour. We encompass Dufferin County, Caledon, and the gray area of Erin, Hillsburg kind of place. But yeah. So pre-COVID, one of our main programs was our local food club. So as you can see there, the kids are wearing these pretty snazzy orange backpacks filled with local food. And it was essentially like a HelloFresh kind of pack before HelloFresh was cool. And it's a seasonal recipe and all local products. So some are from farmers and some are from some producers as well. So how it would work is schools would sign up. And once the school is signed up, the families from those schools could say, hey, I would like a pack. And on local food club day, our volunteers would pack all the food at one of our schools and then drive them to our participating schools. And then students would come at the end of the day, pick up the pack with their name on it and take it home, and them and their family could make this recipe. So it was actually a very wholesome experience. You know, you had local farms, you had the kids involved, you had the schools involved. It was very, very round circle. So it was great. On average, we had about 100 orders, more so before COVID. By the end, it was like 120. So our other big program were our education workshops. So we had a K-3 unit and a 4-6 unit. And there was 3 different workshops three different activities in each workshop. So 2 were just activities, and then 1 was a farmer-led activity. And we'd break the class up into 3 groups, and they would rotate through them. So some examples were they were pickling carrots, making granola. They had these little plant bracelets that they would make, or they were mapping of local farms. So really, it was just a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of learning about, you know, what's locally grown and how we do it and what's in their backyard. And then the pandemic hit, and like everyone else, I think we all just kind of stood there with our jaws hitting the floor, not sure what to do. For us, we had no schools to pack our local food club in anymore. We had no schools to participate in or give their packs to. There's no students. Virtual school meant no hands-on learning workshops. So we had no access to the schools. We couldn't even go in there, and the workshops were all canceled. So like everyone else, we had to pivot, which might have been the most overused word of 2020, 2021, I'm not sure, but I always think of Ross Geller when I hear that. So we pivoted. And from there, we switched to a community-based versus just a school-based program for our local food clubs. So first, what we did was we created a partnership with the Orangeville Food Bank. They had recently gotten a new location. It was beautiful, it was open, and they were really going for a hub kind of feel. So they were happy to lend us some space to pack our packs at. And so from there, we also used PPE, and we had to switch to the boxes, not as cool as the orange bags, but a little safer, as we couldn't ask for the bags back anymore. We had 3 pickup locations, as there weren't school buses and kids to send the kits home with. But what we noticed is our orders were still very low. We were at like 30 or 40 orders instead of over 100. So the next step actually came when we were granted the OTF Resilient Communities Fund. So that is where our funding for some of these pivot projects came from. But with that being said, I want to kind of take that, or get you to take that with a grain of salt, because what you'll see is sometimes we use the grant, but there was a lot of things we ended up not needing the grant for at all. And that was eye-opening. Things that we didn't think we could do were very possible without the grant. So we moved to free delivery of the packs to kind of, work over the fact that there were schools to send them home with. And we had budgeted in the grant money to rent a truck to deliver the packs, and we didn't need it because volunteers stepped up and said that they would like to drive around and deliver these in Dufferin and Caledon. So that boosted us up to about 80% of our usual numbers. So we were at 70 to 80 packs. And we used the grant money for advertisement mostly. So there's some of the other packs that we were able to make during COVID. And the next thing we did was our virtual education. So again, no schools, all virtual, didn't know what to do. So we partnered, or made a friendship, it wasn't formal by any means, with the Upper Grand District School Board. So that's one of the main boards that we deal with. And we worked with their curriculum leaders and asked them, what do you want? What could we do to help? And they pretty much told us, we want synchronous learning. The kids are sick of pushing play on a video. So from there, what we did is we signed up for virtual Meet the Farmers. So you'll see Jeanette and Amy, our farmers, there in their greenhouses. And we streamed them live with 300 students in 2 days. And they would do a short little presentation, and then there was a Q&A at the end. It was hilarious. It was informative. The teachers loved it. The students loved it. The farmers liked it. So it was a good pilot project, and we learned a lot. And for our education now, we are just in the final stages of revamping our normal activities that we would do hands-on learning in the classes to see how we could do them virtually, if that means sending all the materials to the teacher and we are online helping, or if just the teacher does it. So we're in those final stages now. And so what we did in the interim, this is kind of where we used our grant money, is to kind of pilot some hands-on learning without us being present, is we made these kits. So we modeled it after the city of Guelph's. And basically they got a bucket. Our farmers grew these little seedlings. They had seeds, and we made them a little info pack. And we made 100 of them. And we thought, oh, okay, 100, that's pretty good. Turns out they were very popular. And the food banks actually, we asked them first if they would like some, and they cleaned us right out. There was such a high demand for them. So once again, we learned, oh, this is what people want. This is pretty cool. So some main lessons that we learned. First is to find groups who you share common ground with and make partnerships. You know, the food bank and the school board, we were all on the same page on what we were looking for. And that was super helpful. I know, especially with organizations right now, we are all just trying to get things done. So just, put it out there and see what people have to offer. With that being said, make sure you have something to offer back. And I felt that that was a really strong way to make these partnerships. For the food bank, they lend us their space, and we set up so that people could order donation packs of our food box to the food bank. So it was kind of a win-win. And with the school boards, we weren't just saying, hey, will you help us so we can sell our packs? No, we have education for you guys as well. So it was really a win-win for both of those situations. Ask what would be helpful instead of just thinking what you think would be helpful. We learned it was synchronous learning, and they want hands-on learning. And that kind of shaped how we did things. Build a solid volunteer group. Like I said, you don't always need a grant. Most of what we've done is not through the grant necessarily, or if it has been, we can also now learn how to do it without it. So the grant definitely got us off the ground, but I think if you have volunteers, even we only have like 4 or 5, but you can do a lot of good. This is a good one, have good internet. We live in rural Ontario. Our internet is pretty shoddy here. So that is one thing we did use our grant for, was to buy an internet hub. And that has been a game changer for our farmers being able to connect with students. This is what I've said a few times, learn from what is working right now. For us, we learned that the virtual farmer visits may solve issues that we've had in the past, pre-COVID, of booking farmers, especially during high harvest time. They don't have time to come into the school, but you know what? They might have time to click record on their GoPro or whatever and start from there. Find champions. We've seen an increase in our programs as soon as there was a champion at each school or someone advocating at the schools. Look for grants specific to your project. We were very lucky to get OTF, but there's lots of grants out there. And if you need just a little help getting off the ground, that's where you should look. And finally, just to be patient and persistent. Some months look really good for us and some months don't. And you just have to keep at it. And remember, you're in a pandemic and do the best you can, but don't give up, because things all of a sudden look a lot better and things do pop up. So yeah, so that's kind of how we rolled through.
Great, thank you, Allison. That was excellent. Really great to see the way that you utilized your Ontario Trillium Resiliency Grant, and also how you welcomed in volunteers and how things kind of were able to flow, with some extra funding, but also from utilizing other sources. And I love what you said when you were like, ask for what people are needing and what they're looking for. That's so important, because sometimes we make assumptions, right? And we need to ask the people that we're trying to target and reflect what their needs are. So thank you for sharing all that. And I'm sure we'll have some questions later. Excellent. Okay, so thanks, Allison, and we will move on now to our second speaker, who is Mercedes Unwin from AgScape. Welcome, Mercedes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So today I'm going to be talking to you about challenges, opportunities, and innovations, looking at specifically what I did and my team did at AgScape, and how we brought agriculture and food education to Ontario youth. So just a little bit about me. I'm the program resource manager at AgScape, as well as being an Ontario certified teacher. Born and raised in Brampton, Ontario, big passionate about teaching and learning new things. I have a master's of teaching from the University of Toronto. I've been at AgScape for 3 years as a program and resource manager. And I think, just a fun fact, I think dairy cows are adorable. I have a true love and passion for them. So just like some learning goals, and this is very teachery coming out right now, is I'm just going to touch upon all these things during this really brief and fast presentation. So who's AgScape? What did we find challenging as a result of the pandemic? How did we respond? And as we all say, pivot, it's the word of 2021 and forever. It's probably going to be a word we say a lot. How did we focus our attention, and what kind of potential did we see in the areas of virtual and potentially going back to in-person education? So AgScape is a charitable organization. We're funded by the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs. We have also major funders, grants, and members who all contribute to making sure our program is available, free to Ontario teachers and students. So our focus is sparking Ontario student youth interest in agriculture and food-related careers, helping them build confidence in their own food journey and what that could mean for them. Delivering unbiased, factual, relevant, and interactive agriculture and food education. And then we also provide support for Ontario teachers so that they can bring resources and education inside the classroom, potentially outside the classroom. So we all talk about challenges, and this may be a challenge that some may have heard before or not really heard before, but there's this kind of perception, especially coming from Ontario youth, that, agriculture and food is not really a white-collar job. Words commonly associated with agriculture are pitchforks, plaid, low wage, long hours. And it's not seen as a in-demand kind of field that students want to go into. So main focus of AgScape is dissolving these myths. And then COVID hit and we're like, oh my God, this is our mission and we can't deliver any of our programs because all of our programs happen during in-school hours. So we came to a full stop. So that was our big challenge. That's crazy when your organization has one main mission and you can't deliver on your mission. That's a big problem, big problem. So I'm going to focus on our flagship program, which is the Teacher Ambassador Program. And basically what it is, we go into classrooms to deliver 60 to 75-minute length workshops or lessons to grades 7 to 12, all on different topics. Local food's one of them. It's one of our most popular lessons. We also talk about things like climate change, careers, technology, innovation, biotech, and it's all about agriculture and the food system. And teachers can request as many lessons as they wish to be delivered by specially trained Ontario certified teachers. And it happens all across Ontario. So this is a province-wide initiative, a province-wide program. So before COVID hit, we had some problems. We had some challenges. We had difficult in keeping teacher ambassadors in all geographic areas in Ontario. We would see program requests where we didn't have any individuals to deliver the program. There'd be not enough work for individuals who worked in remote and large school boards, and we had high turnover. It was kind of costly as well, the program. We pay for all of our teacher ambassadors to deliver our program, even though it's offered for free, as well as we support in terms of providing for payment for mileage. And then we had this other problem where the individuals, our teachers in our school boards, some may have noticed is maybe not, is that they didn't really see and understand how agriculture and food fit within the curriculum. And they'd say, I teach biology, I don't teach agriculture, even though there's biology in agriculture. So that was like a challenge too, it was perception. And then COVID hit, and when we talk about the program came to a full stop, that was a big deal for us. We did some intermediary band-aids where we released schedules of activities for parents and teachers so that they could give to students. But the program is a big deal for us. We have a lot of funding responsibilities to make sure we're delivering the program to meet our objectives based on funders who provide us all the support. So we took all these conversations. We were listening to our teachers in Ontario. I'm part of a lot of Facebook groups, and a lot of chatter was happening. Talked to a lot of people in school boards and the ministry, and they all said, okay, we don't know what's going on. Get back to us. June rolled around, July rolled around. Nobody knew what was going on. And sometimes it takes a bit of risk and a little crossing of fingers and kind of a little bit of knowledge and asking enough questions to figure out, okay, the majority of school boards use Google as their platform of choice. Let's make an educated choice and make Google our platform of choice. Great thing is we're a charity. They offer Google for free. So we did that, and that will really reduce costs in terms of making a transition to offer the Teacher Ambassador Program virtually. We researched a lot of educational technologies and strategies. We implemented all of these things. We redeveloped all of our existing materials in about 3 to 4 months, and we had it ready to kind of launch October 2020. And that was kind of a crazy thing to kind of change all of your programming in like 3 months and just hope for your best. And then we continue to review it on a continual basis. But here's the good news. We're talking to you a year later after launching our Teacher Ambassador Program virtually. And it's been the most successful 12 months the program's ever had in its existence in the 10 years it's been running. So it's been delivered to over 740 classes, reaching over 16,000 Ontario students. And we were like, okay, what's the reasoning for this program increase? Because before we had all these challenges. We didn't have the people sometimes to deliver the program. There was the barrier around perception. And what we saw is that there was just more conversations happening in public space about our food system, which opened up the doors for the willingness to bring the program in. So that was kind of like oh, hoorah for COVID, thank you. Remote delivery, there's no barriers to reaching more secluded areas, and inclusivity is such a big component of education that remote actually provided opportunities to us. There's less challenges in terms of turnover and recruitment because we could do more with less teacher ambassadors who are delivering the program. And then we saw a reduction in cost areas. So we could actually deliver more of the program because we didn't have to pay for things like mileage. And then kind of what we're seeing now is there's still challenges. We were able to fulfill all of our current grant and funding obligations, which is great. So we didn't actually receive new funding during this time. There was no new funding to make these things possible. We just had funding obligations that we had to meet. So we were kind of we're doing this, which is nice because when you don't have a choice, you don't have a choice. It makes you do crazy innovative things. But now we're experiencing a challenge in fundraising to meet the exponential growth, because now we're seeing less individuals who want to increase their donations a little bit at this time because of the constraints that COVID applied to them. But we're showing that there's more opportunities in investing in our organization due to the new things that's happening with our programs. So what we're doing a lot is focusing all of our grant applications to encompass both virtual and in-person delivery to highlight how we can expand the reach and focus more on inclusivity, because diversity, equity, inclusion is a big component of a lot of great grants happening now. And so that's what we're doing in terms of what's next, is that we're preparing to launch the program for French delivery and actually lower the grades for the program to grade 4 to 6. So we're hearing that the needs, and we're adapting our grants to fit the needs of what they're saying that they want from us. And then similar to Allison, there was lots of creativity. So what we saw was there was a gap in our programs, and we created, in partnership with Farm and Food Care Ontario, the virtual food and farm field trips. So basically we were taking students across Ontario to go on field trips at different farms, agribusinesses, facilities, so that they could actually still have that experience of having a field trip, even though they couldn't go anywhere, which is great because it's really costly to drive kids to off-site locations. We were able to create this innovation at a reduced cost. Basically, the only workload is staff time to actually make this happen. That's split between 2 different organizations. And we've been able to deliver 39 virtual field trips to over 200,000 students in basically the past year and a half that we've been running them. So what's next for us? We're going to continue doing it because it's successful. That's great. Why not? Why stop? So sometimes it takes a moment of evaluating what's working. And sometimes when it's working, you don't always have to change things. You know, everybody wants you to do new, but you just take a moment to look back and say, hey, this is doing pretty good, so let's just keep going with it. And so that's what we've been doing in terms of reestablishing old programs and creating new ones to fill gaps that we were seeing in terms of what we were offering at the time. And that has been leading to a great response from our education industry, our agriculture industry, as well as from Ontario students and teachers. And that's kind of bringing it to an end. If you have more questions, feel free to write my email down. You can ask later on, because sometimes people are stressed in asking questions now during webinars.
Great.
And thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mercedes. That was excellent. I was kind of chuckling in my head. I think instead of pivot, you've done like a triple Lutz with your programs.
Oh, yeah.
Because the breadth and depth and reach of your programs is just outstanding. And it kind of shows when we have a solid investment, what we can do with our programs. And
Yeah.
I also hear you a little bit about also looking for more investment. Yeah, and kind of the factors that are involved when we're trying to scale a program. So thank you for sharing about where your funding's coming from. And we'll see how it goes with finding more grant money to continue your programs in the future.
Yeah, no problem. Not flexible enough to do somersaults in real life, but I felt like I've been doing it for the past year and a half.
I know, lots of us have. So thank you very much. Okay, so then we have our final speaker today, who is Jackie Ryan from Planting Seeds of Hope. Welcome, Jackie.
Thanks, Nicole. Just want to start by saying how amazing the work that Allison and Mercedes are doing is. We had a quick little meet each other a week or two ago, but it was so wonderful to hear about the work that both of you are doing. It's so inspiring and amazing. I wanted to share a little bit about Planting Seeds of Hope. We're a federally registered not-for-profit organization, and our main goal.
Sorry, Jackie, could you just put it on present mode?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Much better. Okay, so kind of our main goal at Planting Seeds of Hope is to create opportunities for children and families to connect with the land in ways that are meaningful to them. And a big part of our programs are giving children the freedom to do that. All of our programs are land-based, and we have a really beautiful seasonal curriculum that we follow that kind of celebrates the wonderful seasons that we have, the huge diversity in weather, and just trying to encourage children to celebrate that. All of our programs they're set up to try to encourage children to engage with the natural world and start to think about the relationships that happen in the natural world and how we as human beings are a part of that. We run programs for families. We partner with schools and different community organizations, and we also run a lot of training opportunities for educators and other community professionals. There's sort of two things that make our programs a bit unique. And the first one that we're really honored to say is that we have some really beautiful partnerships with Indigenous organizations. So we have elders and ceremonial leaders and traditional knowledge keepers coming to speak to our children and our families and sharing their teachings and their understanding on, you know, the sacred roles and responsibilities that we have as human beings to walk in balance and in harmony with the natural world. And a big part of our belief, which we have learned from our Indigenous knowledge keepers, is just how beautiful and sacred that relationship is with the land. So we know from years and years and years of watching this, the more that we create opportunities for children to be on the land, as they're starting to engage with the natural world, they're being imprinted by nature and by all of creation. And we also understand that there's a living spirit of the earth, and there are living spirits in all of creation. And the more that we can create opportunities for children to develop relationships with all aspects of the natural world, it's really important, because nature can teach our children and heal our children in ways that no human being can. So in addition to us as committed educators and lovers of the natural world, we have a lot that we can offer to children and young people, but the natural world has so much more. So when we create opportunities for them to have that experience, it's really powerful. The second partnership that we have is with a global organization that's called Children's Lands. And the quick summary of Children's Lands is that we encourage families, schools, organizations to donate land to children so that the children can become sort of the lead decision makers on that land, and they can create, it almost becomes like a little microcosm of the kind of world that they would love to live in. So we don't put any restrictions on the children. They can do whatever they want on the land, as long as it needs to benefit them, it needs to benefit other people, and it needs to benefit the earth. So when the really young children come out, you know, we say things like, what makes you happy? What will make other people happy? What will make Mother Earth happy? Or all of the things that live outside, what will make them happy? And if any child or young person has an idea that they think will benefit all three, we support that, and we train everybody in the Children's Lands methodology. Our role as adults is not to get in there and take it over. I can speak from experience. I get really excited, and it's well intended when I'm like, oh, we could do this, and I'm constantly going, no, this is the visions of the children, so let them lead us. There's two reasons for this. The first is, you know, that whole decision-making criteria piece is, you know, I think they say we make 35,000 decisions in a day. I'm probably aware of 10 on a particularly productive day. Maybe I'm aware of 20, but certainly not 35,000. So we're making so many decisions, and it's based on a decision-making criteria that sort of has the economy at the center. And our hope with this is that if we can encourage children from a young age, every time they make a decision, yes, we want them to make strong decisions that benefit themselves. But if every time they make a decision or they take an action, they're also thinking, how is this going to impact other people? And how will it impact Mother Earth or the environment? If that can become a normal way of thinking, we're going to see a very different reality. So that's the first one. The second one with Children's Lands is just the importance of finding a place for children to feel like they have a voice. So I think unintentionally, a lot of times you hear, you know, the children are our future, and our thing is, They are our future, but in addition to being our future, they're also our present. So right now at 3 or 4 years old, this child is so much more than just cute. They have a unique perspective, they have inherent wisdom, and they have ideas that need to be listened to. So at Children's Lands, whether it's a tiny little garden or a huge amount of land, there's different places throughout the world. There's been mountains and forests and jungles like donated to children. At our site, we have 46 acres that we've donated to children, and they have been the visionaries and the ones that have helped that land to evolve. So what this was the land that we inherited back in 2009, and it had been used for decades in commercial agriculture. And so this was the land that we offered to the children. And a big part of it when our programming started was just creating those opportunities for children to sit in ceremony or in teachings with Indigenous wisdom, and then giving them the time to develop those relationships. And in the process, while they were developing relationships with the natural world, they started to be inspired by ideas on what they could do. I'm a little bit long-winded, so I'm going to rush through this, but this is a little bit of what our land looks like today. There's a 12,000 tree forest, there's a 1 acre wetland, there's all kinds of children's gardens and fruit orchards, and so many beautiful things with so many beautiful stories on how this came to be, but it has all been led by children. When we look at the impact with COVID, for us, a big part of the success of the program and a big part of our purpose for being is to encourage those connections to the land. So we to find a way for the children and the families and the schools to still come to the land regardless of the restrictions. So what we did during the huge lockdowns is we created an online calendar. There's 46 acres of land. When the lockdowns became very strict, we just had an online calendar, and if any of the families wanted to sign up, they could come out for 2 or 3 hours and nobody else would come out at the same time. So every family was cohorted. They could still be on the land and not breach any kind of protocols. With the schools, we have some partnerships with schools that come out every week. There's a preschool that comes out every week as part of their cultural curriculum. One of the challenges was transportation. So when they couldn't rent buses and that sort of thing, that was a challenge. But as soon as that started up again, they could come out. And then this is my friend Aunt Cindy. She's a Haudenosaunee knowledge keeper, and this was from a couple of weeks ago, giving teachings on harvesting the sacred corn of her people. And you can just sort of see how we just did, the circles are much more spread out than they used to be. And we've just kind of did little clusters of chairs so each family could be a little cohort, and then 2 meters in between. When the kids are on the land with 46 acres, there's no issue with the physical distancing part, but all of the parents and the older children just walk around and have masks handy. And if they want to get together with like another family, they'll just put their masks on to respect the other people. But otherwise, we've continued the programs. When educators come out for trainings, what we're noticing is that everybody has just been so spent during the pandemic. Even with our trainings, we've just started saying, you know what, before we get into any of the material, I set a timer too. Before we get into the material, let's just spend the first hour, just go for a walk or sit under a tree or go wherever you need to go to just be regenerated by the land. So that's a little bit about what we've done. And this is just one of my favorite slides, but it just kind of summarizes the essence of what we want to create and support with children in our area. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackie. Wow, I have to say it's so beautiful. And the word that I think you mentioned and keeps coming is kind of about how everybody that has spoken today has had to um, go through a bit of a transformation. It's reminding me of like a caterpillar into a butterfly, right? And how we've kind of been in metamorphosis and now how are we evolving? And I love the idea of your kind of rehabilitation from the roots up with children, right? And how we're building up. And I agree with you about being in the present as well as looking into the future. So thank you for really showing us about connection to the land and how it can heal and how it can benefit children and quite frankly then their family units and relatives and all of that, and how you worked with the COVID restrictions to still have people connected to the land. That's excellent. Thank you. So there we go, 3 different programs, 3 kind of different perspectives, all with different funders and funding and the ways in which they've chose to navigate the situations. Now is our time for question and answers. And so I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn to see if we have any questions out there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicole. And thanks to all our speakers. Jackie, could you just stop sharing your slide and then I'll refer to the questions. Thank you so much. And we have a short amount of time for Q&A, but I only see one question so far, so I'll ask it and then folks can have another chance to insert questions, or we could just, if there aren't many, we can just go right to the breakout groups. So the one question that I see is from Robert, and his is for Jackie. It's with regards to children's lands. Are all sites rural or peri-urban, and what strategies exist for children's lands in urban settings?
Thank you, Robert. That's such a beautiful question, and I'll try to keep it to a short answer because I have a beautiful long answer. But a children's lands can happen anywhere in any situation. We have a lot of urban sites and urban schools that do it, and they just have, like, even on their paved playground, you know, they've just built some raised gardens and kind of split them into, you know, the one that I'm thinking of it was licensed for 24 preschoolers, and they brought parents in on the weekend, had a barbecue, the kids were helping to build the gardens, and it just went down the one side of the fence and it got split into 24 little tiny plots, and every child chose a plant. Like, so it can be anything. The methodology is just about changing the way that we view the world. So in this case, every child chose a plant that made them happy, a plant that would make someone else happy, and a plant that would make the earth happy. And so beautiful, the ideas that they came up with, and then how those gardens unfolded. So I did mention, like, throughout the world, there's like amazing, inspiring, like there's a mountain in Japan that's dedicated to the kids. There are several rainforests in Peru and South America, but there was one young girl who trained us early on. She said, like, she found these 3 little plastic plastic containers in a ditch, and she filled them with soil and she planted plants in them. And it was her home was just maybe the size of my office. It was her and her mom and another child. And she asked her mom if they could change the room around so that she could sleep beside the door. I get choked up hearing, remembering this, because that door was the only source of light. And she put her 3 plants beside the door and talked to them every day. And she taught us early on, because as the program was growing, everybody wants you to measure the success, you know, and we automatically go into, we can measure how many children and how many square meters of land. And her name was Juliana. And she said, you know, how much shouldn't matter, because not all children have access to land. What should matter is that all of us have a choice. We can choose to do something, or we can choose to do nothing. And like, that is like the ultimate example of the wisdom of children, you know, like that just changed the way that we looked at everything. So yeah, Robert, we can connect later on too, if you want. But the Children's Lands program can work anywhere. And it's really, really beautiful, because the children lead it. So whatever ideas they have on how they can create a better world, we just support that and help them to do it.
Thanks so much, Jackie. And I'm feeling a little bit emotional too, hearing that story, and just so much about, you know, that life and that connection with whatever life you can surround yourself with. And but thank you. Super inspiring. I'm looking at just one other question, and then I'll just get us set up into breakout groups, which is Nancy's asking Nicole if you could share your lovely acknowledgement with the group. And if you're comfortable, maybe Nicole, you could put it in the chat box or share it in some other way. But yeah, I agree. It was yeah, really meaningful and heartfelt. And I think a lot of folks are really looking to figure out how we can make those heartfelt acknowledgements. So what I'm going to do now is it's breakout group time, which is wonderful. We have a few questions for the group. And so I'll just put those forward, and I will put them in the chat box so that they flow with you to the conversation.
Thank you, everyone. I hope you had some fulsome, fruitful breakout room session conversations. I know the room I was in, it was excellent. We shared a lot of information. So I'm just, I personally don't remember the number of the room that I went into. You just kind of go. So I think I'll just call out our moderators by name. And so when you hear your name, if you could pop on and share like your nugget or your essence, because we have about 7-ish minutes, 8-ish minutes to do this. And I think there was 8 groups. So the first one on my list as a moderator is Allison. Allison, will you share your group's essence with us? Where are you?
There we go.
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah, we had some very interesting topics. I think we veered a little, but we talked about stigma and how some of our programs and the stigma and how some of our programs are having a hard time pivoting back, especially when it was helpful to eliminate some stigma. And we also had some very good conversation about sustainability of programming and, you know, the point of doing school-based versus community-based versus family-based. And so there was some, yeah, so it's great. So we actually have someone, where are you? Huh, I don't know where he went, but he's actually looking, he's from U of T trying to do some research on all this. So that's, yeah.
Excellent, great. Okay, this will be interesting at the end if we notice some similarities, because we were talking a little bit about stigma as well. Okay, so yeah, let's bring up Mercedes to share her group's essence.
Okay, perfect. So kind of my group was amazing. I enjoyed the whole conversation. So thank you so much. Some key takeaways is, as Nicole mentioned, we did touch upon stigma, but I think kind of some overarching things that I noticed were popping up was the idea that partnerships are very valuable in terms of building relationships and being able to expand what you do. And then kind of something that was kind of like teased out that I kind of noticed is that being honest about your challenges with your community actually will serve you better, because then there's more interest in people wanting to step up and support you what you do than you may have ever experienced before. I know that was something like personally we recognize that our organization is sometimes we're scared to say we're having trouble in like accomplishing a mission or an objective because we're all scared that seems like we're failing. But by saying that we're having this challenge, more people are more willing to say, hey, here's how we can do to help and fix it and get together and support us in making this happen.
Yeah, I think you're talking a little bit about vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this quote once I heard. It was, vulnerability is your greatest protection. I was like, what? And now as years have passed, I recognize the truth in that statement. So vulnerability is your greatest protection. And then it helps us work together and form a stronger community. Excellent. Okay, on my list, I see Chris. Chris, would you be willing to share for your group?
Absolutely, Nicole. It was actually just 2 of us. It was just Robert Patterson and myself, and we had a great conversation. And the reason it was as good as it was is that Robert spoke majority of it and educated me. But he's creating little garden boxes, cajas, and has done a lot of work in our region. And we're in the Simcoe County region, and so we made some great connections, as well as I'm having a little trouble. We run some student nutrition programs or help support student nutrition programs here locally, and just trying to get the school boards and the health unit on board. try to really help strengthen and improve those programs. And he was able to provide some ideas and just maybe more of just some connections within the region to try to help with that dialogue with the school boards and the health unit to try to get more understanding the value behind student nutrition and improving those programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know sometimes tooting our horn a bit and getting other people to listen is a big part of rolling out programs. And then so great that you got to share with a wisdom keeper that could offer you some ways in which to tackle those things. So that's great. Awesome. Thank you. Next I have Lynn. Lynn, would you like to share for your group?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So we also had a small group of 3. Sherry and Nancy and I were talking. So Nancy's from Nova Scotia and Sherry's from Southeastern Ontario student nutrition program. So one of the things we discussed is the challenge of getting more local foods into the programs, especially during COVID. I think some of the ordering volumes were a little bit lower and more challenging setting up contracts with farmers. And I think this is just an ongoing program, an ongoing issue with a lot of programs, even just establishing those good connections with farmers and getting orders and maybe needing to collaborate with others to getting a significant size of an order put together. We talked about resources, people needing to understand more about local food, and even the teachers and the volunteers in the programs, maybe some fact sheets and some ways to support them in their learning about the importance of local food to our food system, to our local farmers, to our local economic development, and even just understanding sort of the food system in general and how they can play a role. And then I think Nancy was talking about even how going online has provided new opportunities. So for their food box program, there was opportunities for people to learn more about the food box program and engage corporate groups or other group buying of some of the food boxes to support their communities. So that really opened up the community's eyes that the service was available, that it was a good thing, that they could support their employees, or they could support their community by doing some of that buying. And I think Nancy also mentioned that it just helped people maybe in other communities donate boxes to communities where either family members lived to their programs, so that they didn't have to live in the same community where they could donate to the program. So similar to some of the other presenter or feedback we've heard, I think it was a lot about opening up communication lines in the local community with just the local food system players.
Great. Yeah, and the importance of advocacy. And I'll just share one example that I know of is when you develop a good relationship with your farmers and food producers. We had one case where the farmer was able to start growing specifically for our program. So our program became sort of like a CSA that they could count on throughout the school year. So definitely the importance of a good relationship with your growers. Okay, thank you. Jackie, would you report for your group?
I'm actually going to pass it over to Jill, who's going to report for us, but absolutely amazing work that's happening. So take it away, Jill. I think she'll do a much better job encompassing everything that's happening than I would.
I'm not sure about that, Jackie, but thank you anyway. So we actually, we were a small group as well. Bev, who works in the Bruce County area, I think it is, Tobermory to Windsor, was talking about, we were both actually talking about schools and how we actually had to change a lot of what we do when we lost the framework of the schools at the beginning of COVID as a daily structure to deliver food. How did we move on from that? And one of the things that was impact, looking at opportunities and challenges, was that Bev was explaining about just the increased cost. They really focused on produce and fresh food and getting that into the schools, and people were very appreciative of that, but there was a significant cost associated with that. So they moved out into to ask for funding within their communities, and that arrived for them, which was great. That sort of collaborative piece that brings an awareness as well to what's needed. And for myself, I work with the Ottawa Food Bank, and we also, it was a very similar story. We last summer, ONFI, which is our breakfast program, had pivoted, of course, to deliver to homes through our community food banks. And this summer, and it was a bit chaotic last summer, and so this summer we reached out to each other earlier this year, and we said, okay, let's get a plan. So we did the whole thing in needs assessment, planning, implementation, which resulted in this summer we were able to reach 1,000 children a week over 8 weeks. And so that, it just, for us, it was that opportunity of collaboration, and we brought the fresh produce, they created the nutritionally sound boxes as per the student nutrition guidelines, and it was a very successful program. So we're going to try, they did get funding from the ministry for this year, so I think there's been a lot of funding in the system since COVID started. So we are going to try, and we really were trying to do a proof of concept this summer, so that we are going to try and apply for that funding again next year. And I think Bev was also saying she is looking to keep going with some of the initiatives that have started throughout COVID. And then we also had Selena, who joined us out at the very end for the last few minutes, and she has also got is doing a food program, which was initially free, and it was very well attended in the high school where she works. They had a cook, they were delivering, or they were providing lunches. And in terms of that, we discussed like what are the challenges now, because less children are taking it because it's not free anymore. So Bev suggested looking into, like the Rotary Club, Lions Club, looking into the community, who were potential funders in the community, and where Bev had actually found some resources there. So again, it's about that reaching out into the community, and people are always, not always, but often looking to fund programs that reach children. I think Jackie, I captured it. Please feel free to add anything else.
That was amazing, Jill. Beautiful summary.
Excellent. Thank you. Nice partnership there. That sounds lovely. And yeah, I agree about forming partnerships and connections. It was making me think of the image of a tree, branches reaching out and touching and like, oh, hello over there. What can we share to make us stronger, our program stronger? So excellent. And I have Darlene, I think, is our last check-in. Darlene, would you like to share?
Sure, great, thank you. So we were from group 7, and we had a small group. We had Derek and Emily. Emily from the Ottawa area and Derek in the Stratford area. And 2 different conversations. Emily, when we talk about everybody pivoting, they usually have success stories talking about what they've been able to do. And Emily was able to identify many, many challenges that she's had to work within, and the restrictions, because she's in Ottawa, things were, pretty strict, closed up there, dealing with public health. She works with alternative programs, alternative students within the school setting, and the turnover of students is continuous throughout the year. So many, many challenges that she is trying to maneuver. So I think it really made me think that it's not always a positive pivot. That sometimes people are really going up against many, many challenges. And Derek in the Stratford area, I think he reaffirmed again what many of us already mentioned, is that's the strength of partnerships and reaching out and making those connections within your community. He shared a success story with paramedics that are coming into the food area where the meals are, so that people can get any assistance that they need rather than having to go to emergency. So having the paramedics come in, be right in the community and be right in that space. But just reaching out with different services that are within their building rather than sending a referral, just talking to the person across the hallway and getting some access and resources for clients and for any of the population that you're working with. So partnerships, but I think the eye-opener was that some people haven't been able to pivot. We've heard of lots of success stories, but I think being able to identify that some people have not been able to pivot within their organization or within their programs. So thank you. It was a great opportunity and a great conversation.
No, thank you. Yes, and I echo that. Definitely with some of my our salad bar schools, I've definitely heard about lots of major barriers. I mean, when you're not allowed in schools, and currently in a lot of Ontario schools, it's still no volunteers allowed in. So then how are we? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So sometimes not easy to flow like the river. We've got a big boulder, but ultimately we will find a way around it or under it or over it. And
A
perhaps
dam.
working together will help.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
A dam bigger than a boulder.
Yeah, that's okay. We'll call on some beavers, help us out. Anyways, I think, did we hear from all the groups? Did I get everybody? Okay, excellent. Well, here we go. We've got 1 minute on our time. So I'd just like to thank, firstly, all of our speakers. Excellent job this afternoon, very informative and helpful. Here is the list of contacts. So if you heard somebody present today and you'd like to get in touch with them for more information or to help build some of those connections and how we can sort of work together to form a stronger food system, please do. We will also be sending out a post webinar survey. So please, when that will arrive in your inbox shortly. So if you could take a moment and fill that out, that means a lot to us, and all that feedback we read and utilize to help us design these webinars. So I hope you've enjoyed yourself today. I hope you made some great connections and learned something. And overall, thank you for joining us. So thank you, merci, miigwech, and I wish you a beautiful rest of your day today. And let's keep growing an amazing, connected, healing food system for all. Thank you very much. Take care.